was our fourth question there. And then the final one was, how do you create a zoom in and a zoom out effect on a clip? So I'm going to switch back over to my hiking video here. Let me remove this 50s TV look. I'll just create the normal clip here. And with this clip, I'm going to hide the browser. We don't need that. And we'll make the viewer a little bit larger here. If you're editing, if you're new to editing and you're not rearranging the Final Cut interface like I just did, I strongly recommend that you do that. Just maximize your workspace to work for you. You can go up to the window menu. There's a lot of options under workspace to do that as well. So if you want to zoom in and zoom out on your clip, there's a couple ways to do that. So I'm going to go right here where we have the shoe. You can see the camera hanging off the ankle here. If we want to zoom in or zoom out on different spots for this, you have a transform tool in the lower left corner, and you can click on that tool to bring up the transform controls. And this actually lets you move the clip around, and you can grab any of the edges to zoom in or zoom out, make it bigger or smaller as you see fit. And you might have noticed as you do this, also in the inspector, under your video inspector here, all of those controls also change. So you can go here and change the scale or the position and readjust where the video is being seen and kind of how you're zooming in or zooming out. But the other way to do it, we do the reset button here. So to the right of transform, there's a little reset button. Same thing, crop, I'll reset, and that should reset everything. But another way to do it is in the lower left corner, if you click and hold on that transform tool, you'll actually see there's also a crop and a distort tool. So transform is great because you can manually zoom in, change the size of the video. But if you go to crop, there's a couple ways you can crop, and one of them is called Ken Burns. And if you click on the Ken Burns cropping effect, you'll see you get a green and a red box on your screen. If you can't see it, if it's kind of hard to see, you might want to change your zoom to be a little bit smaller. In this case, it's at 32%. If I change it to 25, I can see the edges of the video much clearer now. And so what the Ken Burns effect is basically where do you want to start the zoom and where do you want it to end? So if I want to start in close, I can change my zoom to start in close, and then the red will be where it ends. So if I want to end zoomed out, I can end that way. At the top left corner, we actually have a swap. If I want to start in closer, start out as a full angle and then zoom in, I can do that as well. So it'll start on the outside full screen, and then over the entire length of the clip, it's then zooming in to a spot on here. If you want to see that, just hit the play button at the top left. Now it's playing it back. We see our flash frames are there, and you can see how it's zooming in really close on the clip as I run up the camera there and go downhill. So the Ken Burns effect, great way to create that zoom in or zoom out. And again, if I switch it and play it, this will be the zoom out version. But the Ken Burns effect doesn't give you a lot of control, right? We get zoom in, zoom out, and where it is, and that's nice. It's great, especially if you're newer to this. It can be a lot easier to do that than to have to go through and manually create this. But in this case, I'm going to go into the inspector. I'm going to reset the crop because I don't want the Ken Burns effect, and I'm going to do this manually. So over the entire length of the clip, I want it to zoom out like we were seeing at the end there. So I'm going to start in close down here on the trail, and then as I'm running by, it's kind of zooming out. So to do that, I'm going to bring up my transform tool. I can see my transform tool, and I can adjust it to zoom in, but that's kind of difficult if I want to zoom way in close, and I'm just clicking and dragging to move this around. So I'm going to use the inspector and the scale to zoom way up, and I want it to start right here. So my playhead's at the beginning. I'm going to click on the position and the scale to add a keyframe. This is over on the right side of the inspector, and then I'll go all the way to the end of the clip, and I'm going to take my scale, and I'm just going to double click on the number here and type in 100, and then return or enter. And then for my position, I'm going to do 0, tab 0. This goes back to the standard view there. And now notice it's in close, and over the length of the clip, we're zooming out until the end there. that's how we create a zoom out or zoom in effect. I would recommend checking out the other videos on this channel, so specifically the one for the video animation editor. We saw that earlier in this full live stream, but the video animation editor really allows you to change around those keyframes and where they're going to be located. But this is how you can create a zoom in or a zoom out effect. And to show you another kind of iteration of this, let me reset these, because some people might say, oh, that's easy. Why wouldn't you just use the Ken Burns effect? Well, if you're trying to do something else, if you've watched a show like Bob's Burgers, or there's a couple others that do this, they'll do a really fast zoom in on something with a sound effect or something like that. So you can do that as well using these same tools. Just hit the add keyframe for our scale and position. I'll move just a few frames, like we're trying to zoom in really quickly to something. I'm going to zoom in. We'll go more than 400%. We'll just zoom in really close there to the back of the head. And it's added those keyframes. And we'll go a couple frames to the right, and we'll reset everything back to 0 and 100% for the scale. So similar to the flash frames, this is going to be a very fast zoom in effect that's happening there. So zoomed in really quick and then zoomed out. So those are the type of things that you can do with keyframes, and you can customize this any way that you want to customize it to create those zoom in and zoom out effects. So that is the 5 things that I had for you here on this episode of Final Cut Pro Help Live. Again, just to summarize, we looked at kind of an overview of multicam and how you can use that feature that's built into Final Cut Pro.